So we're live. Welcome, Beth and Melissa.
Thank you.
This is our first in a series of faculty hangouts for our Linfield Online and Continuing Ed program. And our topic today is embedding your librarian in your online course. I have as my guests Dr. Melissa Jones, a professor of nursing in Linfield's fully online RN-BSN program, and Beth West, a librarian at Linfield's Nicholson Library and the librarian for Linfield's online and continuing ed program. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And I'm Jane Wilde. I'm the instructional designer for online and continuing ed. So, I invited the two of you because Beth is the librarian that is embedded in one of Melissa's courses, nursing courses. So I wondered if either one of you could talk to us about what embedding a librarian means in an online course.
I'd be happy to talk about that. The term embedding a librarian is a bit of a broad term. In librarianship, it means any involvement by a librarian in an online course. And that can range from having a discussion board where the librarian is asked questions and can answer them. That's the most passive and least integrated part of being an embedded librarian. And it goes all the way, the other side of the spectrum is actually having the librarian teach a portion of the course, which is what I do in Melissa's class. And that integration is what librarians consider to be best practices for embedded librarianship.
Melissa, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I would say that the practice of the embedded librarian has actually become somewhat of a key feature of our curriculum in the RN-BSN program. Beth is embedded not just in one of my courses that I lead, but another course in nursing research, which is a critical area for nurses to be able to access the librarian and develop those skills in searching the literature. So my course happens to be at the beginning of the curriculum, and myself and Paul Smith, another full-time faculty member, are currently teaching. One of us we each have a section, and Beth is embedded in both of those courses. And that's a transition course where students are just coming into the program, and we have Beth actually teaching a module in the very first few weeks of the course. And so she would be on that sort of other end of the spectrum where the librarian is very embedded, sort of front and center, or I call front-loaded into the course and into the program. And we've done that because applying evidence to practice in nursing is really the most important thing, and we consider the nurse's experience in the RN-BSN program somewhat of an extension of their nursing practice, and these are skills that we hope to develop throughout the program. So we've really tried to prioritize the library skills, but and that's one part of it. The second part of it, I would say, would be that we really want our students to gain familiarity with working with a librarian who in nursing and in medicine and healthcare is really a member of the healthcare team. That's how important evidence-based practice is, and the librarian is often that link to those skills or to those resources that nurses need to apply to their practice. So Beth is one of the tools in our nursing toolkit, so to speak.
So I want in a few minutes to extend this to how this would apply to other courses, but I want to stick with nursing for now. You, Melissa, and Beth's predecessor, Carol McCulley, started this a couple of years ago, and in fact, you've published an article on the topic. I wonder how you came to this. I know that embedding a librarian is a concept in library land, as Beth just mentioned, and I wonder how you came to decide to incorporate the librarian in your courses.
Okay.
And write about it.
Yeah, that's great. I'll start, and then maybe Beth can describe what we're doing currently in the course, so I don't do all the talking. But actually, Carol and I started working together about 6 years ago, and she was always, at least as long as I'd been at Linfield, the distance librarian, and so she was always providing support and expertise for this cohort of students, the online DCE program, or the online and continuing education program. And when we started working together, we were just sort of brainstorming ways that we could make the library skills and the librarian a little bit more visible to our students, and bring those skills again to the beginning of the program, so that they would utilize the librarian throughout their experience at Linfield. And so I would say, just through brainstorming about ways to make her more visible and make those skills more, just really let students know that these are the important skills that you need and actually required. We require our students to apply evidence to their practice throughout the program. So it was a necessity, and it was also a creative way for us to utilize such an important expert in our program.
So I'll talk a little bit about the actual assignment that we do in Nursing 308, the first initial course in the RN-BSN program. Because evidence-based practice is such a large part of the curriculum and of their careers while they're getting their bachelor's degree, because they're all professionals already, we want to introduce them to that fairly early, and so the library is a natural fit for that concept. So the students, they choose a topic, and from that topic they then find keywords, and then they use the databases, specifically a nursing database, to search for an article, examine the best practices in that article, and then compare it to a real life situation within their experience with it when they're working right now. So that was really important to me, especially knowing that these students are sometimes a little bit different from other students in that they have everyday experience in the things that they're learning. You know, they go to work probably 4 or 5 days a week, and so they have real problems from their everyday life that they can bring to the classroom. And so that really provides a connection between what they do on a day-to-day basis and evidence-based practice, and I think it makes it more accessible for them. Did I explain that well, Melissa? Did I leave anything out?
Yes.
Okay.
So, if I understand you correctly, what you were referring to when you said it's really important to you is making that connection to their real life and to the scholarly work.
Yes.
The connection between the two.
Yes, I think that's an important feature for all students. It's much easier to do with the nursing students, because as librarians we want our students to think critically about the sources that they use, both in school and in real life. And with nurses, it's a very short, very easy connection to make, because they can use this information.
Well, that raises, I think, the kind of question that popular media brings up, which is, there are so many resources available to students online. Why is it necessary to go through your librarian? Why is it necessary for students to learn to use their librarian?
That is a really excellent question, Jane. I'm so glad you asked that. Because I think that is the most common misconception about modern librarianship, is that we formerly were seen as gatekeepers of information, where you had to come to the librarian and ask, I need information on this, help me find it. And we find a book or a journal article in print. But librarianship has evolved to where we are now instructors of critical thinking and of being able to evaluate sources that students find anywhere. The first and usually the best place to find those resources when students are in school is through the library, because we pay for access to all these things. But we aren't haters of the open internet. We love that there's so much information out there. But that's my primary job, is to make sure that no matter where students are getting information from, they learn how to evaluate it based on their needs. And so rather than just pointing to information, my primary goal is to teach them to think about it.
Which sounds like a critical skill, even if in their work they're primarily going to be using sources from the internet once
Yes.
they leave school. They need to be able to do what with it?
Oh, yeah. Melissa, yes, please.
Okay. Not every nurse in practice has access to a medical library or a medical librarian, and so nurses, for example, in rural areas or nurses that work at public health departments may not have access. So that's one of the reasons open access is so critical, and also teaching students to access resources that are more reliable and scholarly and evidence-based than others. For example, Google Scholar is one example of a resource that they can use from the internet, from anywhere, and they may be able to access an evidence-based article that's more scholarly than Wikipedia, for example, or WebMD or something like that, a resource like that. So with the librarian in our courses, we're able to, both the nursing faculty and the librarian faculty, able to help students with sort of critically examining the literature, where it's coming from, who the authors are, and determining if that's safe or reliable scientific evidence. So that's kind of our team teaching approach to doing that.
Exactly.
Great. And I actually saw in your article, which is referenced in today's meet, where we're having our text chat, and I will link it up as well once this video is recorded and posted. When you conducted your literature review, you found research that indicated that nurses relied pretty heavily on that quick information that you can get from the internet, and that was kind of scary to me.
Yeah.
And so you're teaching skills to be able to make good decisions about that information and to be able to look deeper.
Absolutely, and there's several barriers that create that outcome. Unfortunately, one of those is time. Nurses who are practicing don't have time to sit down with their librarian and tell the librarian what they need and what they're looking for. And if they don't have the skills, they don't have the time to quickly access that scientific literature easily from where they're working. And so by giving them the skills and connecting them with a working relationship with a librarian, they have more resources. I would say probably the number one thing that we see when nurses come into the program is confidence with those skills. So confidence with searching the library, and that's that key place that the librarian supports their development, is helping them develop the confidence to find that literature so that they will do it, and in effect overcome those other barriers that are in place for them.
Great. So Beth, you've become a regular in the nursing courses.
Yes.
How has this collaboration informed your work and desired work with other faculty in the online programs?
Yeah, I'm most involved in the nursing courses, and I'm involved at the level that I would most want to be at in other classes in those courses. I work a lot in other courses, and I do things like provide research consultations for students, or they have a short exercise where they search for an article online, and then I just check that they've done it. So really, working in the nursing department has shown me the value of integrating fully into the classroom space and being seen as an active participant in learning for the students. And I really think that that will translate well to almost any classroom that has a research component to it. Now, some instructors may be hesitant to allow someone to come in and take over their class for a week or so, and that's understandable. There are other levels of involvement that can still get that familiarity with the librarian and allow me to be seen as a vital part of the learning community that doesn't require me to actually come in and teach for an entire week. There's lots of different options for that.
Can you give me some examples?
Sure. So the thing that I mentioned earlier, where students have, a discussion board that they can ask the librarian questions, it's kind of the oldest embedded librarian model, and I really think it's kind of outdated. In lieu of that, I would say that we can develop things like specified online tutorials for classes that are self-paced. And so I don't have to be in the class teaching, but the teacher can assign a tutorial that I have designed. We do subject guides, online subject guides with recommended resources, and sometimes they can have little small tutorials in them too that we can link for students. There's so many options. Rather than just coming in to teach a lesson for a week, I could create video introductions for students that link up to assignments that they're doing. There's as many ways to do this as there are, I don't know, there's 1,000 ways in order for me to be participating in classes. Certain levels get better results as far as getting students more comfortable, but I am going to work with instructors on their comfort level.
Mm-hmm. Melissa, what have you learned? If you've been doing this for many years now, apparently there must be some lessons learned or takeaways from this kind of collaboration with the librarian.
Yeah, we actually we meet before every semester and kind of evaluate what's working and what's not working, and we make revisions as we need to based on some of the the questions that are arising or roadblocks that students report to us, or new ideas. If one of us goes to a conference and we find out something snazzy and want to try it, we meet and think about how that might work to implement in our program. So I think to follow up on Beth's last point was, each of those options, those tutorials and the different videos and the things that she creates, she'll meet with us, and when we're trying to describe what we're trying to achieve, she's the expert about those items, so she'll have an idea that might be the best way to teach that thing, or teach that item, and so each of those things, though, helps our students adjust to technology and utilize technology in a more effective way. It gives them a kind of a more diverse experience online because they're learning online, and each of those activities really supports their learning and gives them a diverse experience. It also helps them for the workforce and practice. Our students are nurses, and not to keep going back to nurses as an example, but they're using electronic health records. They're using a lot of electronic resources for communication. So it's not unusual to then access your resources, like your librarian, in an electronic way. And so everything isn't face-to-face anymore. So I would say that over the last 6 years or so, since I started working closely with Carol, and now Beth, that probably has changed. So sometimes it's changing the mindset for the student that you're not going to meet the librarian face-to-face, but they have that much of a presence still as a possibility for you.
So you've mentioned, we've been talking about a couple of different things in terms of literacy, if you will. We've been talking about what is sometimes called information literacy, and you've also mentioned technological literacy or tech literacy, and those two things get conflated sometimes, and yet students need them both, and we sometimes assume that because there are 21st century learners that they automatically have that. Do either of you want to speak to either information literacy or tech literacy?
I can, sure, and Melissa, of course, can add in. But we, as librarians, we view information literacy as a very large umbrella term that would probably encompass technological literacy, because part of information literacy is being able to not only evaluate the information that you find, but then to use it and to give it to people or use it in a project in a way that is appropriate for the information and use it responsibly. So in that way, if students are online, then they need to be able to manipulate technology in order to properly use the information that they're getting. So it's all part of information literacy.
So that includes searching, downloading, uploading, publishing, not publishing, using copyright issues.
Yes.
Using the databases.
Knowing how to cite information, using the databases, and then also, though, if a student is, say, creating a video for their project, being able to present the information that they've learned in the way that's appropriate for that content. So the area between where information literacy stops and tech literacy begins is the grayest of gray, and I often find myself just feeling like that's part of my job too, is to make sure that students can manipulate technological software or anything that they need to be able to use in order to fulfill the goals of the course that they're in or the project that they're doing.
Melissa, what do you say to the professor that says that their curriculum is really full and they don't have time really to incorporate the librarian?
I would say that it actually, I mean, it takes time to meet and be creative and come up with new ideas, but the benefits to students the reward is just incredible. I mean, it truly feels like with an embedded librarian, it feels like we're team teaching, and it feels like if I don't know the answer to the question, or if I want the students to get the answer to the question from the librarian to reinforce that relationship between student and librarian, and that relationship as well as that connection to information. It's great to be able to offer that resource to students. You know, not necessarily related to taking the workload off of me, but related to enhancing the student's experience. It just makes the experience, the learning experience, that much more rich. And it also feels like we have a team looking at things, and we can be more collaborative, which I think we know what those outcomes are. When we can be collaborative, the outcomes are better for students.
So this is a case of it's not, it doesn't have to be seen as an add-on. It's
Very much so.
integrated,
Yeah.
and it's doing what you do, just doing it even better.
Yes, a very well integrated library instruction module or whatever is going to be based on the content that you're teaching students. It will flow with the class. So students in Melissa's class, you know, part of learning to use the library is their introduction to evidence-based practice in nursing. It doesn't feel like, oh, this week we're taking a time out to,
Right.
you know, try to learn something about the library. Full integration should be relatively seamless. I mean, they email me instead of Melissa when they have questions, but other than that, it's just a part of their coursework, and that can be done with any discipline.
Mm-hmm.
What can the library, and particularly our library and you, Beth, do for faculty?
Well, if we only have a few minutes, I could probably spend hours doing that. But if a faculty member can come to me with their goals for their students, maybe the goal is that they just want their students to be able to analyze and incorporate research better into their research projects, but it could be any range of things. I can then suggest the best ways in which to, you know, take the library and what the library does and teaching information literacy and get them to that point.
And when you say come to me, I think we are so used to imagining a brick and mortar library.
Oh yeah, that doesn't have to be it at all.
You don't mean that they have to be able to get to the Nicholson Library.
No, not at all. If we think about our online students, I would never suggest that an online student, you know, have to come in and talk to me. They can call me, they can email me, we can do something like this. The same goes for faculty. So if a faculty just wanted to talk to me, like say, oh, these are the things I'm doing in my course, how do you think the library can fit into this? And, you know, I don't have to promise to, yes, I'm going to be in your class for a week if you talk to me at all. They can decide what level is right for them. I feel like I'm pitching some kind of product.
That's okay. But I want to give Melissa. Okay.
I'm sorry. We can do that via all kinds of modes of communication. If it's not face-to-face, then it can be a hangout like this. It could be over the phone. It could be over email. No, I don't require a visit to my office.
Melissa, I want to give you the final word. We're just about done. But either tips for faculty or anything that you would like to say that you haven't had an opportunity to say.
I think the relationship that I've had with the distance librarian over the years and has been super rewarding for me personally, but also for our program. I think that our students are so fortunate to have this resource available to them, and I think we have a responsibility also to provide it because of the impact on learning. So So yeah, I'm thrilled and available to talk to anybody who would like to about embedding the librarian, although Beth would be the one for sure to present those opportunities as well.
Well, thank you. Thank you both. I think this
Thank
was
you.
really informative. It was certainly informative to me, and I look forward to working with Beth, the librarian. Thank you so much, Melissa. Thank you, Beth. Talk
Thank
to you
you.
soon. Thank you, everybody who's watching. Bye-bye.